What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bears Pod with Parker Hurley. This is your host, Parker Hurley. It is Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central. That is the time that we always record, Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock and Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. Tune in then. I do want to add a note right now that I am recording on Tuesday today. I will be out of town on Thursday. If you're looking for the show, it won't be there. We'll be back next Tuesday with some more NFL draft talk. We're in the middle of NFL draft season, and it's unfortunate we're going to miss that show because there's only like 3 or 4 more shows after that we're going to get to talk NFL draft. But this will be a big one. So check it out. Follow me at Parker Hurley at beargoggleson.com. Check out everything we're doing at beargoggleson.com. And we're talking about really one of the biggest things since I talked on Thursday and now on Tuesday is it seems like a lot of smoke has picked up for is Jalen Carter a serious option for the Chicago Bears? If Jalen Carter falls to number 9, is that his floor for, what was arguably the number 1 player in the NFL draft recently? Is he potentially falling to number 9? And we got our man I am Skokes here as always. And leave comments if you got questions, concerns. If you want to talk about, I'm talking Jalen Carter right now, but if you want to talk about anything else, leave some comments in the comment chat, and we'll figure it out from there. But yeah, we already got some people chirping in, getting ready to talk. And yeah, if you guys are tuning in after the live broadcast, leave some comments, questions, concerns, things like that about the next podcast. We'll definitely talk about those. Any comments you leave, caught a couple of those last time. But like I said, Jalen Carter talked on Thursday. Still, my stance is still left tackle for the Chicago Bears at number 9. Thursday's show happened. I said it definitively. I'm definitely leaning, percentage wise, maybe from, I was like 80% left tackle to maybe 60% now with all this Jalen Carter smoke, because the reality is Jalen Carter is the number 1 player in the NFL draft. As far as what he is as a human being or what he is as a person, that's what we're going to talk about. And that's why some of this smoke has me saying, okay, maybe the Chicago Bears are going to be interested in Jalen Carter. And it started with the Adam Schefter report where he said he's going to work out for, I think it's like the Seahawks, the Lions, the Bears, and the Eagles. And those are basically the 4 teams. And then Rosenhaus, his agent, cut it off and said, any team outside the top 10 isn't even going to get to meet with Carter because I'm so confident he's going to go in those top 10 picks. And you say, well, I mean, all of a sudden there's already a 1 in 4 chance. He's meeting with 4 teams. Rosenhaus says he's going to go in the top 10. You could spin it in one way and say that Carter's stock has been plummeting since the NFL Combine. And maybe it's because of his personality. Maybe it's because he interviews poorly. So Rosenhaus says, I'm cutting it off at 4 interviews because if he does actually fall outside the top 10, if he bombs those 4 interviews, I want those teams to not have the interview because then those teams would potentially be turned off. I want them to just be unknown and say, well, by the time he gets to 11, now the risk is probably worth it. We didn't get to interview him, but because he fell so far, we're going to take a shot on him. Did Rosenhaus cut off the interviews at 10 for that? Or did he cut off the interviews because the Chicago Bears were debating Jalen Carter at number 1 overall and they traded back to number 9, and now they're still probably going to take Jalen Carter. They have the serious chance to take Jalen Carter. And another report after Schefter says, well, Carter and Rosenhaus believe they're a top 10 lock. Okay, so the Chicago Bears are in play. Then Mike Lombardi has his podcast, the GM podcast. And I know people have their stances on Lombardi, whether, he's the best in the world, but I mean, he's an NFL GM or a former NFL GM. So he doesn't just like throw things out there for no reason. He said that he heard that the Chicago Bears left the NFL Combine and they traded from number 1 to number 9, feeling confident that they thought Jalen Carter could probably be there at number 9. And he said that they were going to initially only trade down to 2 or 4, maybe 5, something like that. But because when the NFL Combine was when, Carter's arrest came out, Carter had, he didn't work out. All the questions started to come. I think the Bears started to circulate and say, if we move to 4, we thought we were going to get Carter entering the Combine. And now we leave the Combine saying, well, if we go to 9, we still think we can get Jalen Carter. And that's why they left the Combine saying that they could get the number 9 overall pick. And it does correlate time-wise. I know Ryan Poles obviously was talking to everybody about everything in that situation. And that's why he left the NFL Combine and he told Peter King, and people were mocking him when he said, I'm going to trade down potentially outside the top 5. I'm going to get a player back and I'm going to get multiple first rounders. And they said, well, how is he talking crazy like that? And then like 2 days later, that's exactly what happened. obviously he was talking along those lines, but the timeline adds up that he heard that Jalen Carter, and he's doing the math in his mind of, okay, if we trade down to Carolina, it's going to start the quarterback run. If 4 quarterbacks go and Will Anderson goes, there's 5. Then we just need to get 6, 7, 8 before Jalen Carter's hours, and you start talking to teams and situations and things like that. And if polls did get the vibe of, okay, if Jalen Carter is going to be there at 9, we obviously need to bring him in. We obviously need, this is breaking news to us as well. But now that we think that he's going to be there at 9, we were going to trade down to 4 and not get, I don't know who they would have gotten or whatever. We were going to trade down to 4, but now we're going to trade down to 9 because we feel like Jalen Carter could be there. And then another, goes Schefter, Lombardi, and now Bill Zimmerman from the Windy City Gridiron. And I know Bill because he's from Bear Goggles On from a while ago. And that's where I tend to trust Bill's, sources and reporting here because I know him, and I don't think it's necessarily favoritism, but it's that I've known him since like 2015. So since 2015, I've seen him, he's not a clickbait person. He's not somebody who throws out inaccurate reports. He's somebody who, and he doesn't get like tons of breaking information. He just gets little bits and spurts of information here and there. So either way, if Bill says if Jalen Carter's there on the board, they're seriously considering him, and it confirms what Lombardi said, what Schefter said. That's where I'm saying a little bit of smoke. Okay, big smoke. Smoke is flying everywhere. It said, okay, definitely. If Jalen Carter's there at number 9, I think he's firmly in play for the Chicago Bears. And we do have a comment here. It says, it's looking bad right now because he's visiting the Seattle Seahawks as we speak. And that's where this is such a fluid situation. And I think the Rosenhaus report is definitely right. And keep leaving comments about the Jalen Carter, or if you want to take it any other direction. I think it's going to be interesting because Jalen Carter's meeting with Seattle. Okay. Could he blow them away and, be the easy pick for sure? What if he bombs the interview? We don't, personality wise, that's what's so fascinating about this Jalen Carter thing. And it's also true that, one team could be very turned off by Carter and his personality. One team could say, well, he was just being, I think that's an aggressive personality, or, something along those lines, or, I think if we get enough out of him, people are going to take that meeting. However, it's going to be different specifically based on Jalen Carter. And people have talked about, well, the Raiders probably, how do you take Jalen Carter when you're based out of Las Vegas and you've had your first round pick, Henry Ruggs, with a DUI, so are they going to view Jalen Carter through a different lens? And the Seahawks, another team that, like St. Lauren was talking about, the Seahawks, they drafted Malik McDowell, a 3 technique a few years ago. It wasn't the number 5 overall pick, but it was a second round pick, very high in the second round. And he turned out into be nothing. And he actually wrecked a motor vehicle and he ended up messing up, his upper body and things. So, the Seahawks are doing their due diligence, obviously, but I don't know if him meeting with the Seahawks means that, he's going to be the pick there. I do think because the smoke is coming out that the Bears, because he's a lock for the top 10, so maybe 9 is the floor. And because Lombardi said, well, they were going to take him at number 1. And because of the incident, that's one of the main reasons they traded down. And because Bill, after they met him, Jalen Carter, Bill says, no, I think the interest is still there. So Seattle, the interest could easily be there and it may be there. Detroit, the interest could easily be there and it may be there. I think if he gets past those 2 teams, I think we know, or we assume now, the interest is there for the Chicago Bears. So that's where I think maybe the floor is 9 and maybe, he goes 5, but like I said, maybe if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 4 and Will Anderson goes 5 to Seattle, is Will Anderson the safer pick, or is Tyree Wilson? People are saying Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson. Is he the safer pick? We're going to see. It's going to be really interesting. And we're probably going to spin off of this into, okay, if the smoke is real that the Chicago Bears are interested in Jalen Carter, and if the Bears do think maybe Carter could fall to 9, we're going to play out a mock draft because the last mock draft I did had a tackle at number 9. And so we're going to see how different the board breaks if we take Jalen Carter at number 9 versus if we take an offensive tackle at number 9. So leave some comments. Follow me at Parker Hurley. And follow us at beargoggleson.com. We're talking big time Jalen Carter because I think it's fair to say, as we stand right now, there are 4 teams most likely to draft Jalen Carter: the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm starting to get an understanding that maybe the Eagles are even out of it because he's not going to fall past the Bears. So maybe it does come down to, if Seattle and Detroit do not take him, does he end up with the Chicago Bears? So obviously, we're the number 9 overall pick in my mock draft here as we get into it is going to be Jalen Carter. And when you think about, just quickly how he fits in, he's obviously going to start next to Andrew Billings there. And then behind them, you probably still need some, nose tackle depth. But then you have Justin Jones, who goes from last season. Justin Jones was, the number 1 player in snaps, a big time starter. Now he's your 3rd guy in a rotation, potentially your 4th guy based on the draft pick. And we've talked about Matt Eberflus. I mean, the love for and need for a 3 technique in his defense goes back to DeForest Buckner with the Indianapolis Colts. He needed that. He traded a 1st-round pick for DeForest Buckner. It goes back to the first signing they tried to sign last year was Larry Ogunjobi, and he failed a physical. Like, they obviously want that position. They were eyeing up Carter with the number 1 pick, and now they just have to decide personality-wise. And like I said, he's such a good fit. So we will move in. And like I said, how's the board going to break now? We took Jalen Carter. Okay, that's how he fits. 2nd round pick, 53rd overall here. I'm going similarly to the last time, actually, and not taking a tackle. When you look at the way the board breaks, it seems like, there's going to be a run on tackles before that 53rd pick. And I think it's just tough to see a tackle that you feel really confident in being there at that 53rd overall pick. And I think potentially as you get further into the draft, and I think one of the things that Ryan Poles did last season to find Braxton Jones was not just selecting Braxton Jones. Braxton Jones was one of, like 5 offensive linemen that he drafted. So I think, taking multiple dart shots at offensive linemen, if you don't take someone at 9, if you take someone at 9, it's pretty clear, he's your left tackle. You move Braxton Jones to right tackle. If you don't take someone at 9, I think it gets interesting, but I don't think, someone like Matthew Bergeron, I don't think he's going to be there at 53. All these mocks you see, DeJuan Jones, I don't think he's going to be there at 53. So I took Joe Tippmann. It's something that I did in the last mock draft too, a center from Wisconsin. I think one thing I do think he's going to be there. I think I talked about John Michael Schmidt seems to have like a safer floor, and he seems to fit more schemes. So I think he's going to go ahead of Tippmann. I think the Chicago Bears take the number 2 center with their 2nd round pick here. It makes a lot of sense because he's the better scheme fit for the Bears anyways in their zone-based scheme. I think Schmitz can fit into any scheme, and that's why I think he's a little better. But I think Tippmann is better in the zone-based scheme, so I think he fits the Chicago Bears just fine. And when you look at the way the board breaks, it does seem likely that he's going to be there. And when you look at the Cody Whitehair, Ryan Poles announces that he's potentially going to be the guy who slides in at center. And you say, oh, well, back in, 2019 or whatever, he was pretty good at center. He's been a capable lineman throughout his career. The issue with that is that, from 2020 through now, he's been a shell of himself in terms of the thing that I said about Cody Whitehair is he played through injuries, and he was, this tough guy who, just played through the toughness. And when you get to a certain point, your body, I think, is just starting to break down on him. And he's missed time in 2 of the last 3 seasons. And the issue with when he misses time in 2 of the last 3 seasons, when he's playing, you can see that he's playing through something, and he's just a shell of himself. And even in 2021, when he was fully healthy, arguably his best season was just a steep decline, and his last 3 seasons have been easily the 3 worst seasons of his NFL career. So, I mean, you look at this and you say, Ryan Poles can't be serious when he says that Cody Whitehair is going to be the starting center for the Chicago Bears, or he has to realize that this is probably only going to last, like 8 games, or there's going to be ups and downs in training camps, and you're going to be annoyed, and you're going to say, like, we couldn't do this. So him saying that Cody Whitehair is going to start at center told me that they're going to draft a center. And I personally think that we could be seeing Chicago Bears fans remember a Charles Leno situation where they draft Tevin Jenkins, and the Monday after the draft, they cut Charles Leno. I could see them saying, all right, we got Tippmann. We still have Lucas Patrick. Cody Whitehair, you should go find a new job somewhere, just be in depth somewhere. Cause I just don't see, I didn't buy the idea that he's going to be the Bears starting center. And that's where I think they're going to take someone in the 2nd round. So let's move into 61st overall pick, Derek Hall, an edge from Auburn. It's true that they added Rasheem Green, and so when you add the whole room together in terms of the edge rushers, DeMarcus Walker's in there, Rasheem Green's in there, Travis Gibson and Dominique Robinson are in there. So they got 4 guys in a rotation. I think you add a guy like Derek Hall because, one, they didn't draft Travis Gibson. Travis Gibson was awful in the second half of the season, was, just one of the worst pass rushers in the NFL. You could say maybe now that he's, a 2nd or 3rd guy, he could be pretty good, but either way, I don't think it's, I don't think they like Travis Gibson all that much. I don't think you're banking on Travis Gibson. So a guy like Derek Hall, and here we got I am Skokes with a comment. That's his sleeper edge pick, and it's mine. I think it's a great fit for the Chicago Bears here. Especially, I mean, first off, I talked about it last podcast. I think there's like a range of like 6 edge rushers that like one of these guys is probably going to fall there. I think Derek Hall is definitely one of them. One of the things, he's a little bit shorter, a little bit slimmer. I don't think, I mean, he gets pushed around in the run a little bit, but I don't think it's due to, lack of trying or anything like that. I think he's a hits principle type of guy, hustle, intensity, the technique and the smarts and all that. I think he plays from whistle to whistle. And I think one of the best things he does is he gets off of the ball really quickly and he plays, he can time those snaps and play really well with the echo of the whistle. So, I mean, he starts at the beginning of the whistle and he plays to the end of the whistle. He's got a few moves. He mainly relies on his speed, but he can convert speed to power, especially when he gets that step on the offensive lineman. I think the thing with him is that, okay, if he's a little bit of a smaller, shorter speed rusher who maybe can get pushed around in the run a little bit as, a younger player, what did we just sign for the Chicago Bears? DeMarcus Walker, who is big enough as an edge rusher that, people are saying, well, he's basically the 3 technique, he's basically the big guy on the interior. So he's a good run defender. And then you have Rasheem Green, who's a good run defender. And you say, well, these guys aren't getting anything in terms of, pass rush. So let's bring in a speed guy like Derek Hall, who can, just come blitzing off the edge. As a rookie, you use him in situational play, third downs and things of that nature. So, and like I said, I mean, I don't think you can lock in Travis Gibson, and maybe Travis Gibson's a guy that, you trade for a conditional 6th round pick, in training camp, or maybe he's a guy that on draft weekend, you pick up an extra pick. We know that would be really nice for the Chicago Bears. So, that's where I'm going there. Derek Hall, even though they added edge rusher Rasheem Green, I think that they just keep adding, and I think they need a speed rush type player. And I think he brings a little bit of speed and he definitely has the tenacity off the edge. So moving to the last, the 3rd round pick, the first pick in the 3rd round, they have that little run of 53 to 64 here. They start with Joe Tippmann, then we go Derek Hall, and then we finish it up with Jalen Duncan from Maryland. It seems like I said, I don't think he's going to go high enough in the top 50, but I think he's in this range here where in the 3rd round, maybe you take a shot on somebody who could potentially start at left tackle for you. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, where they stand on him. Jalen Duncan's a really interesting guy because, in some of those, once the draft's over, those people do those way ahead mock drafts, futuristic mock drafts a year ahead. After last year, people were saying, oh, well, Jalen Duncan, give him a season against, some Big Ten pass rushers. He's going to be a 1st round pick next season. He's going to be a 1st round pick next season. His 2022 really, he didn't clean up any of his technical flaws or anything of that nature. But you see the guy, I mean, at the Senior Bowl, you could see that like a fluid mover, an easy mover, somebody who just, has that drop step and pass protection, who can get that, who can get those speed rushers like Derek Hall, who can, go all the way outside the edge. He can take, those drop steps all the way outside and stick with those edge rushers and things like that. He's got some serious technical flaws, but I think the athletic upside, first of all, is going to entice Ryan Poles. Obviously, he's into that. And then, like I said, there's some pedigree that his 2021 season was much better than his 2022. He was at the Senior Bowl, working hands-on with Ryan Poles. I think it's a good fit in the 3rd round here. And, yeah, I think what's going to be interesting here is as we transition into my 4th round pick is another guy from the Senior Bowl, actually, another offensive tackle, is Wanya Morris from Oklahoma. And the thing with him is, and the real question with him is that he messed up his hamstring running the 40 at the NFL Combine. So he hasn't, he didn't run a 40, obviously, so you don't really have anything like that. And he hasn't done anything at his pro day. He's been resting up his hamstring since he injured it, but he's really, no, I don't want to say similar to Orlando Brown, but like in that vein of, he's not going to test out of the gym, and you're just going to have to rely on the video. And I think Brown had much better video than Wanya Morris, but Morris has good enough video. He's a 4-year starter. The good news with Wanya Morris is he started for 2 seasons with Tennessee at left tackle, and then he moved over to right tackle for the Oklahoma Sooners, and he spent the last season there. And, a really big body. I think the one question with him is, how fluid is he in his feet? But I keep saying, if you're going to pass on a tackle in the top 10, like we did in this draft, you're going to have to add guys with questions. So, Jalen Duncan has the smooth feet, some serious technical issues. Wanya's a little slow-footed. He's got good enough hands. He's got some technical issues and things like that. And a lot of it is his lower body is just slower than what you would really want. And like his lower body needs to be worked out. But he's got enough strength in the running game. And the reality is like, oh, the Bears want these fast athletic linemen, but when you're in the fourth round here and you want a starting right tackle and you're saying we need somebody who could potentially start over Larry Borum here. And like I said, I mean, maybe what you do is you say, all right, Braxton, you keep the left tackle job, and it's Jalen Duncan versus Wanya Morris. Or it is, yeah, Wanya, you played right tackle last year. Braxton's on the left side, and Jalen Duncan, because you're athletic enough, you can, we'll see which side you're on based off of OTAs. Or it is just like they did last year where Tevin Jenkins started on a left tackle, then he's right tackle, then he's right guard, and, they're all playing everywhere. So we're going to see. But I think the one thing you have to realize is if the Chicago Bears don't take a tackle at number 9, first off, they're going to have to take multiple guys. And second off, they're going to have to, take guys who potentially aren't scheme fits, who are just potentially, the best player there, just and potentially, yeah, like a guy like Wanya Morris, who's a good right tackle. And potentially, if your starting right tackle is Larry Borum, then, what are you talking about with, oh, is Wanya Morris this great scheme fit? Your starting right tackle is Larry Borum. You got to upgrade over that. So even if it is a 4th round pick, and like I said, even if it is Jalen Duncan potentially switching sides and having a good summer, maybe that's it. Or maybe it is Braxton Jones switching sides because Jalen Duncan beat him out. I mean, that's where you got to bring in names if you're not going to take one with the 9th overall pick. So the next 4th round pick we have here, Cameron Mitchell from Northwestern. I think a really interesting one. And the thing that I wrote obviously is that early on, they're talking about Peter Skoronski from Northwestern. Then they're talking about Audie from Northwestern. And now we're talking about Cameron Mitchell because it seems like, with the Bears need at like a true left tackle or a true tackle, they passed on Skoronski, or, the smoke has cleared, or, it's not as trendy of a pick in mock drafts. And people are saying that Audie Adebawore, isn't going to be there, when the Chicago Bears pick at 53 or 61. And he may be one of the reasons that one of those guys like Derek Hall falls, because people are taking him ahead of Derek Hall. And just a couple months ago, I think a lot of the consensus boards had Derek Hall over him. But either way, now, the Chicago Bears, they got to get one of these Northwestern guys. And I actually really liked Cameron Mitchell. I think if it wasn't such a loaded, cornerback class, and this is such a good cornerback class, he gets no buzz whatsoever, Cameron Mitchell. And really, I mean, somewhat deservedly so. That some of his best traits are some of the traits that Matt Eberflus is going to like, in terms of he plays hard, he tackles, he plays physical against the run. He isn't afraid to put his hands on people. Sometimes that's an issue because some of the things with him is he doesn't have elite length. He doesn't have elite, speed. He's not a super tall or thick person. He, some people think he should move into the slot because he's such a good tackler that he can hang in the slot there. So, there's obvious questions in his game. One of the people that I compared him really favorably to is Steven Nelson from Oregon State. And, I think, man, where is he now? He moved all the way around. He was on the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Eagles and the Texans. I don't know where I think he's still on the Texans, Steven Nelson, but really reminds me of Cameron Mitchell. Just played tenaciously and, and he fell into this like 3rd, 4th round range because people said, well, he doesn't have the height and the length. Is he better off in the slot? And Nelson has played his time in the slot now because he can play in the slot and out of the slot. People really like him. And like I said, he's bounced around a little bit, but he's started everywhere he's gone. And I think Cameron Mitchell could be that mid-round pick who, isn't flashy like Steven Nelson, but you can move him in and out of the slot. He makes big tackles. He plays physical against the run. And, every once in a while he can stick in there and make some plays. And I mean, you look at the Bears position and you say, they have Kindle Vildor right now. They have Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson are their main 2 starters. When they go to nickel, you slide Kyler Gordon into the slot and you have Kindle Vildor. The good thing with Cameron Mitchell is, okay, maybe you want, because Kyler Gordon had such a rough season, you keep him on the outside, you put Cameron Mitchell in the slot, or because of Cameron Mitchell being able to play outside, you could potentially move on from Kindle Vildor, or at least Kindle Vildor is being pushed. He's not just being handed a job, which right now it'd be hard not to say that Kindle Vildor on 3 cornerback sets, it'd be really hard to say Kindle Vildor isn't a starter. So moving on to the 5th round pick here, we got Parker Washington from Penn State. I talked about him last time as a sleeper of mine. And I think, a lot of these guys I'm betting on are, these hits principles guys, hustle, intensity, technique, and smarts. Parker Washington fits all of those. Watch his games really the last 2 years against Ohio State. He had 2 really good games against Ohio State. He makes acrobatic catches. He's small and, he's slow, which he hasn't run a 40 because he has a hamstring injury. And because he hasn't run it, he's fallen down. He's going to run, 4 or 5 at best. He's small and slow, but like, as I would compare it to, is like a Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry ran like 4.6 and he's like 5'10. But the dude he's intense. And that's what you got from Jarvis Landry, is just like, he'll knock you on your butt. He'll play tenaciously, like I said, and he'll fit that hits principle. And the biggest thing with him is he can return punts. So immediately, Velus Jones didn't return punts in college. He fumbled a couple punts. He may still keep his job because of kick returns, but the reality is Parker Washington can immediately come in and return punts. So that's something that Dante Pettis was doing last season, and you don't want to bring, Dante Pettis back. And, it's not like Claypool's going to return punts, maybe DJ Moore, if it came down to it. But I think you draft somebody like Parker Washington and he can return punts for you. So that makes a lot of sense there. And yeah, like I said, he's kind of like the small slot, whereas Chase Claypool would be the big slot. And then Darnell Mooney's like the speedy slot, and you kind of just shuffle all 3 of them in there. So the next 5th round pick, Keandre Coburn from Texas. Really, he's like a nose tackle. He doesn't bring much more in terms of pass rush. And the real reason that he may fall even lower than this is he doesn't have the elite arm length or really good arm length. And you really want to see, with those nose tackles, you really want to see them, wide gaps, extend their arms, be able to fill multiple lanes, and then also be able to bench press those guys. Those shorter arms tend to, hold him back a little bit, but he also plays a really short and squatty, style of football. And he plays, similar, I've been saying, I think if you want to bet on guys that before you put a guy in a mock draft, say, would he hit the hits principle? And I think a guy like Keandre Coburn, to fight the fact that, you would say, oh, he's an overweight, slow nose tackle. He plays with a get off, and he plays violently, and he understands his limitations with, his physical upside and things like that, but he plays within it, and it's good enough. And like I said, basically as like a 5th round pick, he comes in and it's Andrew Billings and Keandre Coburn. It's Jalen Carter and Justin Jones. At least, especially with Jalen Carter in there, that actually sounds pretty good on paper. And, finally, and that is, okay, let's look at the defensive line in my scenario here. Jalen Carter and Justin Jones, Andrew Billings and Keandre Coburn. You got DeMarcus Walker, Rasheem Green, and Derek Hall on the edge. A little Dominique Robinson, maybe some Travis Gibson. You say, okay, now it's like, now that you add in Hall and Carter and Coburn and those guys, like now we're getting somewhere. And now that Walker and Green are in here, it's starting to get somewhere. 7th round pick, we'll get through it real quick here, is Braden Willis, tight end from Oklahoma. I really like him because he reminds me of Trayvon Wesco, who they just lost, and really versatile, can line up in the backfield. And one of the things they wanted to do, put Wesco at fullback, put Kari Blasingame at tight end. I know it's like, oh, wow, a fullback and a tight end are switching spots, but it's enough versatility and things like that and Luke Getsy really likes it. It helps with the running game. I think Braden Willis would be a great pick. And then MJ Anderson, another one that I just wrote, fits the hits principle. And like I said, I'm just taking shot after shot after shot on the defensive line, just not letting any defensive line that I think has any sort of, oh, MJ Anderson mainly gets hustle sacks, but he can fight with his hands a little bit, but he gets no burst. All right, well, let's bring him in here and let's see what he can do, because Travis Gibson, like I said, I want him to be on the chopping block. I want him to be, we could trade him for a conditional pick, things like that. So that is my mock draft. It's the first one that I did with Jalen Carter going number 9 to the Chicago Bears. So check it out. It is on beargoggleson.com, mock draft 3.0, Jalen Carter to the Chicago Bears. Check that out. Check out everything I do at beargoggleson.com, and check me out on Twitter. Like I said, if you're not listening live, leave some comments in the comments, some feedback, things like that. I will not be here Thursday, so don't tune in Thursday. We'll be back next Tuesday. I think we're going to be talking line play, unless some news happens and things like that. News always happens right now. We're going to be talking line play. Some of my guys that, like I said, if they don't go tackle at 9, let's talk about some of those guys. Let's talk about if they don't go Jalen Carter at 9. Let's talk about some of those guys. That'll be next Tuesday. So we'll talk to you guys then.